Take a deep, comfortable breath, allowing your shoulders to drop and your body to settle perfectly into the surface beneath you. Tonight, we are going to explore the magnificent landscape of your own mind by imagining a journey far beyond our atmosphere, stepping out into the vast, quiet expanse of a spacewalk. As you lie there, imagine the heavy, protective door of an airlock sliding open, revealing the infinite, velvety blackness of the cosmos. Instantly, you are met with absolute, profound silence. This silence exists because space is a true vacuum. Sound waves simply cannot travel without a physical medium, like the air in your room or the water in an ocean, to carry their vibrations. It is an acoustic emptiness that is entirely foreign to human experience. Grace. Isn't it remarkable how your brain responds to this total absence of sound? When humans are placed in absolute silence on Earth, such as inside an anechoic chamber, where the background noise drops to a staggering negative 20.3 decibels, the brain does not just turn off. Instead, the auditory cortex, located in the temporal lobes just behind your ears, actually turns up its internal sensitivity. It searches so desperately for auditory input that you begin to hear the intricate, usually silent workings of your own body. You hear the rhythmic thumping of your heart, the rush of blood pumping through your carotid arteries, and even the high-pitched hum of your own nervous system operating. Out here, floating in the gentle embrace of space, your mind experiences a phenomenon known as auditory pareidolia. This occurs in a specialized region called the superior temporal gyrus, where your brain, naturally craving patterns and meaning, begins to construct a gentle, phantom auditory landscape out of the silence. It is your mind's way of wrapping you in a familiar blanket of sensory experience when the outside world offers none. Right now, as you rest in your quiet room, a small structure deep within your brain, called the thalamus, is acting as your sensory gatekeeper. It is actively filtering out the predictable background hums of your house, the quiet whir of a fan, the settling of the floorboards, allowing you to drift closer to sleep. On a spacewalk, the sudden absence of any hum forces the thalamus to recalibrate entirely, opening the gates to a profound inner stillness. Imagine the feeling of gently pushing off the edge of the spacecraft, your body enveloped in a bulky, protective extravehicular mobility unit. As you float, you realize that the familiar sensation of up and down has completely vanished. This remarkable shift happens because of your vestibular system, a tiny, elegant apparatus hidden deep inside your inner ear. This system relies on microscopic calcium carbonate crystals, beautifully named otoconia, which rest on a gel-like membrane inside the otolith organs. On Earth, gravity constantly pulls these tiny crystals downward, telling your brain exactly where you are in space. But in the microgravity of a spacewalk, these crystals float freely. They no longer provide that constant downward pressure. Your brain's biological compass is temporarily suspended. To compensate for this sudden vestibular silence, your brain does something deeply fascinating. It undergoes incredibly rapid neuroplasticity. Within just moments of floating, your brain begins shifting the heavy lifting of spatial orientation almost entirely to the visual cortex at the back of your head. Because your inner ear is no longer sending reliable signals about gravity, your eyes become the primary mapmakers of your reality. Whatever your feet point toward temporarily becomes down, and whatever is above your head becomes up. This visual reliance can create a powerful experience processed in your parietal lobe, known as vection, the compelling illusion of self-motion. If you are floating completely still outside the International Space Station, and the massive solar panels slowly rotate in your peripheral vision, your parietal lobe might trick you into feeling as though you are the one spinning, tumbling backward into the stars. It is a gentle reminder of how beautifully adaptive your mind is, constantly interpreting the world to keep you safe and oriented. As you drift in this boundless ocean of quiet, think about the physical sensation of your body. Right now, lying in bed, you can feel the softness of your mattress pressing against your back and legs. This is the work of your somatosensory cortex, a strip of brain tissue that maps every touch and temperature across your skin. Without gravity pulling you down against a surface, astronauts experience a sudden lack of localized pressure. Your body's sense of proprioception, your innate awareness of where your limbs are in space, usually relies on muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs. These microscopic sensors are embedded in your muscles and tendons, and they require the constant resistance of gravity to send strong signals back to the brain. Without that resistance, floating in a spacesuit feels like being suspended in pure, weightless water. The somatosensory cortex no longer receives the distinct feeling of a chair or a bed, creating a deeply relaxing sensation of floating effortlessly, a feeling you can mimic right now as your muscles deeply relax into your bed. But the physical adaptations do not stop there. The environment of a spacewalk is one of extraordinary extremes. In the direct light of the sun, temperatures on the outside of the suit can soar to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, while in the Earth's shadow, they plummet to negative 250 degrees. Yet, inside the suit, you feel perfectly comfortable, bathed in a gentle, cool climate. This miraculous balance mirrors the work of your hypothalamus, a small almond-sized region at the base of your brain that acts as your body's meticulous thermostat. Whether you are floating in the thermosphere or snuggled under a heavy blanket, your hypothalamus is constantly making micro-adjustments to keep your core body temperature perfectly optimized for rest and survival. And as you gaze out through the gold-tinted visor of your helmet, looking at the brilliant, swirling blue and white marble of the Earth below, a profound psychological shift takes place. Astronauts refer to this as the overview effect. When the human brain comprehends a view so immense, so devoid of borders and boundaries, neuroscientists believe it triggers a massive decrease in activity within the default mode network. This is the network in your brain heavily associated with ego, self-referential thought, and daily anxieties. As the default mode network quiets down, you are flooded with an overwhelming sense of awe and interconnectedness. This experience of profound awe is not just an emotion, it is a measurable physiological event. Viewing the Earth from space strongly stimulates the vagus nerve, a primary component of your parasympathetic nervous system. When the vagus nerve is activated, it acts like a biological brake pedal. It drastically slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and floods your body with a deep, restorative calm. You can trigger this exact same vagus nerve response right now, simply by taking slow, deliberate breaths and visualizing that expansive, peaceful blue planet floating in the dark. As you continue this gentle spacewalk, blinking slowly, you might close your eyes for a moment to rest them. When astronauts do this, they sometimes experience a phenomenon where they see sudden, silent flashes of light in the darkness of their closed eyelids. These flashes, known as phosphonies, are actually caused by high-energy cosmic rays traveling through the vacuum of space and passing directly through the retina or the visual cortex itself. It is a harmless but beautiful reminder that the universe is alive with invisible energy, painting light directly onto the canvas of the mind. Your brain is incredibly resilient, physically reshaping itself to master this new, gravity-free world. A landmark 2020 neuroimaging study revealed that astronauts actually experience an increase in white matter within the cerebellum after spaceflight. On the cerebellum is the brain region, nestled at the back of your skull, responsible for coordinating balance and precise movement. Learning to gracefully operate and move inside a 300-pound pressurized extravehicular mobility unit creates entirely new neural pathways within mere hours of the first spacewalk. Your brain literally rewires its internal circuitry to help you glide smoothly through the void. Even the fluids within your body experience a serene shift. Without gravity pulling blood and cerebrospinal fluid down toward your legs, there is a gentle upward fluid shift toward the head. This slight increase in intracranial pressure can actually alter the shape of the optic nerve and slightly flatten the back of the eye, a measurable adaptation known as spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, or SANS. It is simply the body seeking a new equilibrium, finding a new way to balance itself in the quiet expanse. Eventually, the spacewalk must end, and the mind must return to rest. But how does one sleep when floating amongst the stars? The suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master circadian clock located just above the optic chiasm, usually relies on the setting of the sun to release melatonin and signal that it is time for bed. But aboard the International Space Station, orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles per hour, an astronaut witnesses 16 separate sunrises and sunsets every 24 hours. The brain's master clock must adapt, learning to ignore the chaotic light of the sun and trust the internal rhythms of the body instead. When astronauts finally slip into their sleeping bags, tethered lightly to the wall so they don't float away, their sleep architecture adapts to the silence and weightlessness. Studies have shown that while the vivid, dreaming stages of REM sleep remain largely intact in microgravity, the amount of deep restorative slow-wave sleep is often reduced during the first few days in space as the brain gets used to the sensation of floating. Yet, even in the depths of space, the brain's magnificent maintenance system, the glymphatic system, continues to function flawlessly. Just as it is preparing to do for you right now, the glymphatic system utilizes periods of rest to literally wash the brain, flushing out metabolic waste built up during the day's activities. Every moment you spend imagining this silent, floating journey, your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is regulating, adapting, filtering, and preparing for deep, restorative rest. The same miraculous neural networks that allow a human being to step out into the absolute silence of space are actively working within you right now, keeping you comfortable, keeping you safe, and gently guiding you towards sleep. To fully appreciate this journey into the profound quiet of orbit, consider how humans first attempted to understand sensory isolation, long before we ever built the technology to leave the atmosphere. As you rest comfortably, imagine the year 1954. A neuroscientist named John C. Lilly constructed the world's first sensory deprivation tank. He wanted to solve a burning question in psychology. If the human brain is entirely cut off from outside stimulation, no light, no sound, no gravitational pressure, does consciousness simply power down into a dreamless sleep? And the answer he discovered was a resounding no. Within the warm, dark, soundproof water of Lilly's tank, researchers utilized electroencephalograms, or EEGs, to observe the brain's electrical activity. They found that when external input drops to zero, the brain shifts into a dominant pattern of alpha waves. These gentle rolling electrical currents pulse at a frequency between 8 and 12 Hertz. They signify a state of deeply relaxed, waking alertness. Rather than shutting down, the brain becomes a brilliant, self-sustaining theater. It draws upon its own internal archives of memory and imagination, painting vivid landscapes onto the blank canvas of isolation. A little over a decade later, in 1965, the cosmonaut Alexei Leonov put this human resilience to the ultimate test during the very first spacewalk. When he pushed open the hatch of the Voskhod 2 spacecraft and floated into the vacuum, he was met with a sensory environment completely unprecedented in evolutionary history. His physiological response was deeply human and brilliantly orchestrated by his nervous system. Driven by the sheer awe of the experience, his amygdala, the brain's small almond-shaped emotional processing center, sent a rapid stimulating signal to his adrenal glands. His heart rate temporarily peaked at 143 beats per minute, pumping oxygen-rich blood to his muscles. In response to this exertion and the heavy insulation of his suit, his core body temperature gracefully rose by 1.8 degrees Celsius, managed diligently by the thermoregulatory pathways of his brainstem. He was a pioneer, perfectly supported by the beautiful ancient survival mechanisms of his body. What Leonov experienced out there parallels a fascinating psychological discovery made just a few years earlier, in 1957. Aviation medical researchers Brant Clark and Ashton Graybeal published a landmark study on high-altitude pilots who flew alone in single-seat jets. They identified something called the break-off phenomenon. As pilots climbed higher into the stratosphere, leaving the familiar visual anchor of the ground behind, they reported a profound, peaceful feeling of physical detachment from the Earth. Today, neuroscientists trace this serene sensation of detachment to the temporoparietal junction, a region where the brain processes where your body ends and the rest of the world begins. In the absolute quiet of an orbital spacewalk, without terrestrial anchors, this junction temporarily softens its boundaries, expanding a person's sense of self into the limitless frontier around them. Observe how your own body feels as you lie still. You can sense the distinct pressure on the backs of your heels, your calves, and your shoulders. This grounding sensation is heavily reliant on specialized nerve endings called plantar mechanoreceptors, located primarily on the soles of your feet. These highly sensitive receptors send continuous electrical impulses up your spinal cord and into your somatosensory cortex, constantly affirming, "Here is the ground, you are upright." But in a spacesuit floating miles above the atmosphere, there is absolutely no pressure on those plantar mechanoreceptors. Because of this missing data, an incredible 85% of astronauts experience what neuroscientists call the inversion illusion. As soon as they close their eyes, their brain attempts to solve the puzzle of missing gravity and simply assumes they must be hanging upside down. It is a completely harmless, almost playful, miscalculation by the brain, highlighting how heavily we rely on the subtle, continuous pressure of gravity to tell us which way is up. To understand how the mind learns to move in this weightless environment, picture your primary motor cortex as a master conductor leading an orchestra, but suddenly relocated to an auditorium with entirely different, completely unfamiliar acoustics. On Earth, this conductor creates what cognitive scientists call forward models. Before you even lift your arm, say, your brain has already calculated the exact amount of muscular force required to overcome gravity's downward pull. It predicts the future of your movement perfectly. In orbit, those predictions are suddenly wrong, An arm requires almost zero effort to lift. Research shows that it takes the brain's motor networks about 3 to 4 days of continuous exposure to microgravity to completely update this forward model. The synapses in the motor cortex literally physically remodel themselves, adjusting the tension and electrical output sent to every muscle fiber until the astronaut learns to glide rather than walk, using only the gentlest nudges of their fingertips. Deep within your brain, another magnificent adaptation is taking place, involving spatial memory. Tucked away in the medial temporal lobe is a structure called the entorhinal cortex. This area provides your brain with internal grid cells, which function exactly like glowing lines of latitude and longitude, allowing you to map three-dimensional spaces. On Earth, our grid cells are optimized for moving across flat surfaces, walking across a room, navigating a neighborhood. But a spacecraft has no defined floor. You can float through a module upside down or sideways. A fascinating 2019 neuroimaging study revealed that because astronauts no longer need to use standard two-dimensional terrestrial navigation, the volume of their hippocampus, the region heavily linked with spatial memory, actually shows a slight temporary reduction during long-duration missions. It is an exquisite display of neural efficiency. The brain reallocates its resources, saving energy by turning down the volume on skills it temporarily does not need. At this very moment, your brain naturally tracks the passage of time without you even trying, utilizing a network involving the basal ganglia and the supplementary motor area. These regions act as your internal stopwatch, usually synchronized to the natural cadence of your walking, the ticking of clocks, and the predictable arc of the sun. But during a spacewalk, hovering in a soundless void where you are moving at orbital velocity, this internal stopwatch often expands. Astronauts frequently report a mild form of time dilation. Without terrestrial cues to anchor them, hours can feel like mere minutes. Maintaining this level of spatial and chronological focus requires immense energy, even while you rest. Your brain is a hungry organ, consuming roughly 20% of your body's entire glucose supply. During the highly complex, meticulously choreographed maneuvers of a spacewalk, the prefrontal cortex, the area directly behind your forehead, responsible for intense concentration and executive function, drastically increases its glucose uptake. To keep the mind serene during this immense cognitive load, the brain generates specific electrical rhythms. In 1963, cosmonaut Valery Bukovsky became the first person to have their EEG recorded while in orbit. Scientists observed a pronounced dominance of theta waves, oscillating between 4 and 8 Hz whenever he engaged in complex orbital tasks. These theta waves are the exact same frequency your brain produces when you are in a state of deep, relaxed meditation or light sleep, proving that supreme focus and profound calmness are biologically intertwined. As an astronaut prepares to transition from the silent spacewalk back into the pressurized cabin for rest, a multitude of sensory shifts occur. In microgravity, the fluid in the human body distributes evenly, rather than pooling in the legs. This gentle upward fluid shift naturally fills the soft tissues of the face and the nasal cavity, physically dulling the receptors in the olfactory bulb. Because of this, astronauts often experience a muted sense of smell and taste, much like having a mild head cold. This historical quirk of spaceflight is why pioneers like John Glenn relied on heavily spiced or pureed foods. The brain simply receives less chemical data from the nose, so it pays far less attention to flavor, allowing the astronaut to focus entirely on their mission and their rest. When sleep finally approaches, the history of human rest collides with the reality of space. For centuries before the Industrial Revolution, humans practiced segmented sleep, waking in the middle of the night for an hour before returning to a second sleep. Astronauts often adopt their own unique rhythms, sometimes utilizing polyphasic sleep, taking strategic planned rest periods rather than one long, unbroken block to accommodate mission demands. As they drift into unconsciousness, the brain begins generating sleep spindles. These are rapid bursts of electrical activity, firing at a frequency of 11 to 16 hertz, originating from the reticular nucleus of the thalamus. Sleep spindles are profoundly important. Research demonstrates that they are directly responsible for consolidating new motor memories. Every new movement the astronaut learned during their spacewalk, how to angle their wrist, how to tether a tool without gravity, is replayed and permanently wired into their nervous system during these brief electrical bursts. Simultaneously, the body's stress response system, known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, completely recalibrates. On Earth, a phenomenon known as the cortisol awakening response causes a natural healthy spike in the hormone cortisol about 30 to 45 minutes after you open your eyes, providing the energy needed to start the day. In the isolated, confined environment of space, historical biomedical tracking shows that this cortisol rhythm gently flattens out, adapting to the lack of a natural dawn. The body learns to find deep restorative peace entirely independent of the sun, clearing metabolic waste and repairing cellular structures in the beautiful, weightless dark. The mind requires no gravity to dream, no atmosphere to heal, and no sound to find absolute quiet. Imagine the physical sensation of your body adjusting to this boundless quiet. What's happening now is a beautiful architectural shift, right down to your skeleton. On Earth, gravity acts like an invisible heavy blanket pressing down on your shoulders all day. Think of your spine as a tightly coiled spring, compressed by the simple weight of your own posture. Deep within the structure of your back, tiny, flexible cushions called intervertebral discs normally squeeze out fluid during your waking hours. But out here, free from that constant downward pull, those discs act exactly like dry sponges placed in water. They gently and naturally expand. In fact, an astronaut's spine can lengthen by up to 5 centimeters, or roughly 2 inches, during a mission. This elongation forces a brilliant update within your cerebral cortex. A specialized strip of tissue called the postcentral gyrus contains a highly detailed topographic map of your entire body, famously known by neuroscientists as the sensory homunculus. Because your limbs and torso are suddenly positioned differently and you are physically taller, this complex neural map must actively redraw its borders to account for your stretched out frame. It is a quiet, seamless adjustment happening entirely behind the scenes. Notice how your joints feel right now, resting softly against your mattress. If you were to fall asleep underwater in a perfectly buoyant, warm pool, your body would naturally curl into what biomechanists call the neutral body posture. In microgravity, your knees, hips, and elbows naturally bend, coming to rest at roughly 128-degree angles. You have likely seen video footage of sleeping astronauts floating peacefully, their arms hovering gently in front of their chests. This happens because the basal ganglia, a cluster of neurons that usually maintains a continuous background tension in your postural muscles, finally powers down. It no longer needs to fight gravity to keep you upright, so your overall muscle tone drops to a state of profound, absolute relaxation, perfectly mimicking the heavy, limbs-loose feeling you experience right before a deep slumber. Picture this. Stepping outside the spacecraft requires wearing heavily pressurized, multi-layered gloves to protect your hands from the extreme vacuum. Operating intricate metallic tools while wearing these gloves is much like trying to play a delicate piano sonata while wearing thick silicone oven mitts. Normally, your fingertips rely on thousands of tiny rapid-adapting receptors called Meissner's corpuscles. These microscopic sensors detect the exact millisecond an object begins to slip from your grasp, allowing your nervous system to unconsciously tighten your hold. Because the thick, pressurized layers of the spacesuit heavily mute these cutaneous mechanoreceptors, cognitive studies show that astronauts unknowingly increase their grip force by 40 to 50%. The brain simply overcompensates for the lack of delicate haptic feedback, demanding extra effort from the forearm muscles to ensure no tools float away into the dark. Consider the visual contrast of stepping out of the airlock into the sun's glare. The environment outside the station is a landscape of profound extremes, blinding, brilliant sunlight contrasting sharply against the purest, inky black shadows of the void. Experiencing this is remarkably akin to waking up in a pitch-dark bedroom and immediately looking at a smartphone screen set to its absolute maximum brightness. Your pupillary light reflex is instantly triggered by a small structure in the brainstem called the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which rapidly constricts your pupils to protect your delicate retinas. To process this stark contrast, your visual system relies heavily on the macula, the tiny, highly sensitive center of the retina packed tightly with cone cells. These cones thrive on bright, high-definition light, while the rod cells on the far periphery of your eyes continuously work to process the deep, lightless borders of the cosmos. At this very moment, lying perfectly still in your room, you might be able to hear the soft, rhythmic cycle of your own breathing. When an astronaut is sealed inside their suit, isolated from the external world, they experience a sensation deeply comparable to wearing a pair of high-quality, active, noise-canceling headphones. When external auditory data drops to near zero, the brain naturally amplifies internal biological signals. This internal physical awareness is called interoception, CHI, and it is governed by the anterior insular cortex, a unique fold of tissue buried deep within the cerebral fissures. Psychological research demonstrates that when humans are placed in sound-isolated environments, their interoceptive accuracy, their ability to correctly feel and count their own heartbeats without checking a pulse, improves by up to 25%. The mind turns its attention inward, tuning in to the comforting biological metronome of life. Scientists discovered early in the space program that adapting to this new sensory world requires a bit of neurological patience. Consider how your brain's sensory integration functions much like the auto-rotate feature on a smartphone. On Earth, the accelerometer inside your inner ear easily dictates your orientation, telling the screen of your mind which way to point. In space, it is as if the phone is lying flat on a table, constantly flipping the image because the primary gravity cue has vanished. You have likely experienced the mild discomfort of trying to read a book while riding in the back seat of a winding car. Your eyes stare at a stationary page, but your inner ear feels the physical swaying of the vehicle. This mismatch triggers what researchers call the sensory conflict theory of motion sickness. In orbit, up to 70% of space travelers experience a similar phenomenon known as space adaptation syndrome during their first 72 hours. Their eyes clearly see the stationary walls of the cabin, but their vestibular system feels completely unanchored and adrift. A tiny area in the medulla oblongata, called the area postrema, detects this intense neurological mismatch. Fortunately, the brain is wonderfully adaptive, Within just a few days, the cerebellum rewires its sensory input preferences, choosing to ignore the confused inner ear and trusting the visual data from the eyes entirely, seamlessly returning the body to a state of calm balance. As weeks turn into months on a mission, the psychological experience of time and isolation mirrors common, everyday earthly experiences. Think about the feeling of being exactly halfway through a very long, multi-day road trip. The initial excitement of the departure has faded, but the destination is still a long way off. Space psychologists refer to this as the third quarter phenomenon. During specialized analog missions designed to simulate space travel, such as the 1989 ICE isolation studies in Antarctica, researchers noted a natural dip in mood and motivation just past the midpoint of the journey. This occurs because the brain's ventral tegmental area, a primary hub for the reward chemical dopamine, becomes starved of novel stimuli. The walls look the same, the sounds are identical, and the daily routines rarely change. To counter this natural dopamine dip, astronauts cultivate immense, deliberate mindfulness, finding tiny, beautiful variations in their technical tasks to gently stimulate those reward pathways and maintain a peaceful, steady mood. Deep within the brain, the transition back from the spacewalk to the sleeping quarters initiates a beautiful, highly choreographed descent into rest. Allow your body to sink further into the mattress, permitting your mind to simulate that exquisite sensation of orbital sleep. Just as you might occasionally feel a sudden, harmless jolt in your leg, right as you are drifting off on your living room couch, astronauts frequently experience hypnic jerks. These involuntary muscle twitches, known clinically as sleep myoclonus, happen exactly as the reticular activating system, the primary wakefulness center of your brainstem, hands over neurological control to the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, or the VLPO, which acts as the brain's primary sleep switch. On Earth, we often interpret this sudden muscle twitch as a startling feeling of falling. But in microgravity, where the sensation of free fall is a constant ambient reality, the brain interprets these hypnic jerks quite differently. It simply registers them as the body shifting gears, effortlessly sliding into profound rest without any fear of hitting the ground. During this weightless slumber, the mind begins its essential nightly maintenance. The paravascular channels of the brain widen, elegantly sweeping away protein byproducts, like amyloid beta, that accumulated during the long, concentrated hours of the spacewalk. This sophisticated microscopic plumbing system ensures that when the astronaut eventually awakens for another orbit around the glowing Earth, their cognitive networks are completely refreshed, sharp, and perfectly attuned to the silent, magnificent beauty of their environment. Reflect for a moment on how this profound, orbital silence relates to your own everyday life. When you intentionally seek out a quiet room after a long, overwhelming day, your nervous system attempts to replicate the exact same biological boundaries an astronaut experiences inside their spacesuit. Or think of your mind as a sophisticated camera utilizing a long exposure setting. Throughout your waking hours, the shutter clicks rapidly, capturing thousands of fragmented, high-speed snapshots of emails, conversations, traffic, and bright screens. But when you lie down in the dark, you are holding the shutter open. Without the glaring light of constant stimulation, your brain slowly gathers the faint, beautiful starlight of your own internal thoughts, allowing deeper, more meaningful patterns to slowly emerge on the photographic film of your consciousness. What occurs in the brain during this quiet gathering of internal light is managed by a fascinating system known as the salience network. Anchored by the anterior insula, and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. This neural network functions as the ultimate arbiter of importance. During your busy day, the salience network is highly active, constantly deciding which external alarms, voices, or tasks require your immediate attention. But in the total acoustic void of a spacewalk, or in the stillness of your bedroom right now, this network shifts its focus. Because there are no external threats or urgent stimuli to flag, it begins highlighting your internal physiological state and your long-term memories. It turns down the volume of the outside world, granting you the mental bandwidth to finally process the complex emotions you may have pushed aside during the busy hours of your day. Scientists have documented that the environment we breathe heavily influences this process of finding peace. Inside an extravehicular mobility unit, an intricate life support system meticulously scrubs carbon dioxide from the air. This is crucial because deep within your brainstem, specifically in the medulla oblongata, sit highly sensitive central chemoreceptors. These biological sensors do not actually measure oxygen. Instead, they constantly monitor the acidity of your cerebrospinal fluid, which changes based entirely on carbon dioxide levels. On Earth, if your bedroom is poorly ventilated and CO2 levels rise slightly overnight, these chemoreceptors trigger microarousals, tiny, brief awakenings that fragment your rest. By maintaining a perfectly balanced, fresh atmosphere, the spacesuit ensures the chemoreceptors remain dormant, keeping the astronaut's respiratory rate incredibly steady and calm, just as a cool, well-ventilated bedroom protects your own continuous slumber. Consider how the mind constructs reality when it is entirely removed from the familiar pull of the Earth. A fascinating 2014 psychological study analyzing the sleep journals of astronauts aboard the International Space Station revealed something deeply poetic about human memory. Despite living and working in a magnificent futuristic environment of weightlessness, roughly 73% of their dreams prominently featured terrestrial themes. Astronauts reported dreaming about walking on a beach, driving a car, or accidentally dropping an object and watching it fall to the floor. This happens because of a dynamic conversation taking place deep within your temporal lobes. During the slow-wave stages of rest, your hippocampus, the brain's temporary inbox for new experiences, communicates heavily with the expansive neocortex, where long-term memories reside. Because your neocortex has spent decades building highly complex schemas based entirely on Earth's gravity, it stubbornly holds on to those physical rules during dreams. It takes immense amounts of time for the brain to write entirely new gravitational laws into its deepest memory vaults. This is a beautiful reminder that no matter how far we travel, our minds remain fundamentally grounded in our personal histories and the familiar landscapes of our past. Notice the gentle weight of your own thoughts as you settle into this concept. When you are disconnected from external demands, your default mode network engages in a sophisticated cognitive process called prospection. Also known as mental time travel, prospection relies heavily on Brodmann Area 10, a region located in the frontopolar cortex, right behind your forehead. This area is responsible for integrating multiple complex thoughts and aligning them with your long-term life goals. Whether an astronaut is gazing out at the curvature of the Earth, or you are resting quietly under your covers, this brain region utilizes periods of silence to weave your past experiences into future predictions. It is the biological engine of hope and planning, quietly organizing your future while you simply breathe. To understand how the brain preserves the physical skills we learn, we can look to a psychological concept first identified by Hermann Ebbinghaus, called the savings effect. When an astronaut spends 6 hours outside the space station, carefully manipulating tools, their motor cortex is firing relentlessly. Once they return to the airlock and finally fall asleep, the brain initiates a process of synaptic pruning. It actively weakens the neural connections related to the mistakes they made, the clumsy grips or the inefficient movements, while simultaneously strengthening the precise synapses that led to successful actions. Even if they do not perform another spacewalk for a decade, the savings effect ensures that the fundamental neural architecture of that skill remains permanently archived. When you learn a new physical skill in your own life, your brain protects that investment, permanently saving the blueprint in your motor pathways while you rest. Deep within the microscopic universe of your cells, rest and environment shape your actual biology. In 2019, NASA concluded its landmark twins study, comparing astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent nearly a year in space, with his identical twin brother, Mark, who remained on Earth. Researchers closely examined their telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of DNA strands, much like the plastic tips on shoelaces that prevent them from fraying. Remarkably, the study found that despite the radiation of space, Scott's telomeres actually lengthened temporarily during his mission. Scientists attribute this partly to a strict, highly regulated regimen of exercise, optimized nutrition, and scheduled, uninterrupted rest periods. The enzyme telomerase, which rebuilds these protective caps, is highly sensitive to our lifestyle. It serves as profound evidence that structured, peaceful rest does not just refresh the mind. It literally protects and repairs the genetic fabric of the body at a molecular level. Picture the intricate chemical shifts occurring as the body completely surrenders to sleep. When the mind enters the REM stage, the period of sleep where those vivid, gravity-bound dreams occur, an extraordinary neurochemical change takes place. The locus coeruleus, a small cluster of neurons in the brainstem, completely ceases its production of noradrenaline. Noradrenaline is the primary neurotransmitter responsible for stress and anxiety. According to the research of neuroscientist Matthew Walker, this creates a unique biological phenomenon known as amygdala depotentiation. Because the brain is completely stripped of its stress chemistry during REM sleep, it can safely process the difficult or overwhelming emotions of the day without triggering a physical panic response. It is a built-in overnight therapy session, meticulously smoothing out the sharp edges of your daily experiences so you can wake up feeling emotionally restored. At this very moment, your autonomic nervous system is demonstrating its brilliant capacity for downregulation. As you transition into a deeper state of relaxation, muscle sympathetic nerve activity, or MSNA, gently decreases by roughly 30%. This reduction in sympathetic drive signals the smooth muscles surrounding your blood vessels to relax, a process called peripheral vasodilation. As blood vessels in your hands and feet expand, they release heat into the surrounding air, naturally lowering your core body temperature. This subtle warming of your extremities is a universal physiological prerequisite for deep sleep, explaining exactly why humans naturally seek out cool rooms and warm blankets. Simultaneously, a cluster of specialized orexin neurons located in the lateral hypothalamus begins to quiet down. Orexin is a crucial neuropeptide that acts like a neurological light switch, keeping your brain firmly in a state of wakefulness throughout the day. As darkness falls and your body remains still, the production of orexin drops dramatically, effectively dimming the lights in your cerebral cortex and signaling that it is finally safe to disconnect. As the mind transitions into continuous sleep, the biological maintenance crews arrive. Instead of using the phrasing we might normally use for this cleaning process, think of it as expelling accumulated metabolic byproducts. Throughout your waking hours, the intense firing of neurons generates cellular waste, including adenosine and tau proteins. During deep rest, the space between your brain cells actually expands by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to rush through the neural pathways, efficiently clearing away these byproducts. It is a flawless, elegant system of biological renewal. Furthermore, during these quiet hours, a region of the hippocampus called the dentate gyrus engages in adult neurogenesis. It physically grows completely new, healthy neurons. These pristine cells are then woven directly into your existing memory networks, enhancing your capacity to learn, adapt, and find joy in the days ahead. The quiet you provide for yourself at night is not simply a pause in your life. It is a profound, active state of biological creation and cellular preservation. Every system within you is collaborating seamlessly, building a stronger, healthier mind in the beautiful, undisturbed dark. Have you ever wondered exactly how the nervous system interprets a world entirely stripped of its usual atmospheric blanket? Think of your biological sensory receptors as millions of highly sensitive, microscopic microphones scattered across your body. On Earth, the brain acts like an elite audio engineer sitting at a massive mixing board, constantly adjusting the volume sliders for wind, temperature, gravity, and background noise. But when an astronaut steps into the profound emptiness of orbit, nearly all those external sliders are suddenly pulled down to zero. To understand why the body feels the way it does in this unique environment, we must explore the fascinating science of sensory mechanics. Focus entirely on the sensation of touch and temperature. Inside the heavy, protective shell of an extravehicular mobility unit, an astronaut wears a highly specialized undergarment called a liquid cooling and ventilation garment. This layer is woven with roughly 300 feet of narrow, flexible tubing that continuously pumps chilled water across the skin. Your skin is embedded with specialized thermoreceptors. Beneath the epidermis, microscopic structures known as Ruffini endings constantly detect warmth and continuous physical stretch, while nearby bulbous receptors, called Krauss end bulbs, are highly tuned to detect cold temperatures. When those 300 feet of cool tubing first press against the skin, these receptors fire millions of electrical action potentials up the spinal cord. However, within minutes, a brilliant neurological process called tactile habituation takes over. Deep within your parietal lobe, the secondary somatosensory cortex decides that this constant, predictable temperature data is no longer urgent. It gently mutes those specific neural pathways, allowing the astronaut to completely stop feeling the garment. You experience this exact same biological filtering mechanism every single night. When you first pull the covers over your shoulders, you feel the distinct texture and temperature of the fabric. But as you lie still, your secondary somatosensory cortex elegantly tunes out the feeling of the sheets, dissolving the boundary between your skin and the bed, helping you to settle profoundly into rest. Observe the mechanics of sound when there is no air to carry it. It is physically impossible for a sound wave to travel through the vacuum of space. Yet astronauts are never in total, absolute silence. They hear the rhythmic and mechanical hum of their own life support systems. The reason for this lies in a phenomenon called bone conduction. Rather than traveling through the air and vibrating the tympanic membrane, your eardrum, the gentle vibrations from the suit's water pumps travel directly through the hard, composite materials of the helmet and into the astronaut's skull. Specifically, these mechanical waves enter the mastoid bone located just behind the ear, bypassing the outer ear entirely. The vibration travels directly into the fluid-filled spirals of the cochlea, stimulating the tiny hair cells inside. Because the ambient environment is so radically quiet, a tiny muscle in the middle ear, called the tensor tympani, naturally relaxes its tension. This relaxation makes the inner ear exquisitely sensitive to these internal structural vibrations, turning the heavy spacesuit into a personalized, softly humming acoustic chamber. A compelling biological adaptation occurs when the brain is deprived of external acoustic data for extended periods. Neuroimaging studies of individuals in prolonged sensory deprivation reveal a mechanism known as cross-modal plasticity. After just 90 minutes in an environment without sound or light, the brain's sensory territories begin to temporarily share their resources. The auditory cortex, lacking any signals from the ears, begins accepting data from the somatosensory cortex. Simply put, the brain begins processing the physical feeling of vibrations as if they were soft, ambient sounds. It is a brilliant display of neural efficiency, ensuring that the mind's intricate processing centers never remain idle, even in the deepest quiet. Now, consider the chemistry of scent. Because space is a pure vacuum, an astronaut outside the station cannot smell the cosmos. But the moment they return to the airlock, close the outer hatch, and repressurize the cabin, they consistently report a highly distinct metallic odor. Those who have experienced it describe the scent as a mixture of seared steak, hot metal, and welding fumes. Astrophysicists have traced this phenomenon to molecules known as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are high-energy particles constantly released by distant stars, and they physically cling to the outer fabric of the spacesuit. When the airlock fills with oxygen, these particles finally have a medium to travel through. They enter the nasal cavity and bind to the olfactory epithelium. From there, the electrical signals travel to the piriform cortex. What makes the sense of smell entirely unique among human senses is its anatomical rooting. Every other sensory input, vision, touch, hearing, must pass through the thalamus, the brain's central relay station, before being processed. Scent, however, completely bypasses the thalamus. The piriform cortex wires directly into the amygdala and the hippocampus. This direct biological highway explains why the metallic scent of a spacesuit instantly triggers vivid, deeply entrenched emotional memories for returning astronauts, just as the scent of a familiar perfume or fresh rain instantly transports you back to a specific moment in your own life. Shift your focus to the visual spectrum, moving from the glaring, unfiltered sunlight of orbit directly into the massive, inky shadow of the Earth triggers a dramatic recalibration within the retina. What this specific physiological change is known as the Purkinje shift. During bright photopic conditions, the human eye relies entirely on cone cells, which are most sensitive to wavelengths of light, around 555 nanometers, colors in the yellowish-green spectrum. But as an astronaut drifts into the deep shadow of the planet, the visual system must transition to mesopic or twilight vision. During this shift, the rods on the outer edges of the retina take over. The eye's peak sensitivity rapidly moves down the spectrum to roughly 507 nanometers, which corresponds to blue-green light. This biological adjustment means that as darkness falls, the vibrant reds and yellows of the spacecraft's exterior seem to fade into gray, while blue and green hues temporarily appear strikingly bright and luminous. It is the exact same optical adjustment your eyes make when the sun sets outside your window, painting your bedroom in soft, cool, blue-toned shadows before total darkness sets in. Within your eyes right now, highly specialized receptors are quietly performing a vital task completely unrelated to seeing shapes or colors. Discovered in the early 2000s, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or iPRGCs, are scattered across your retina. These cells contain a unique photopigment called melanopsin. They do not send image data to the visual cortex. Instead, they act as the ultimate light meter for your biological clock. Melanopsin is highly reactive to the bright blue light reflecting off the Earth's oceans and atmosphere. When these iPRGCs detect this specific blue wavelength, they send a rapid signal directly to the pineal gland, forcefully suppressing the production of melatonin. To combat this and protect their sleep cycles, space helmets are coated with a microscopic layer of gold, and cabin lights are carefully engineered to filter out specific melanopsin-triggering wavelengths as rest periods approach. By controlling the light spectrum, the brain is gently coaxed out of its high alert state, allowing melatonin to flood the nervous system. What is happening behind these sensory inputs is a masterpiece of thermoregulation, a process critical for both survival in space and your own nightly rest. To initiate the deepest stages of slumber, the human brain requires a physical drop in temperature. Even a reduction of 1 degree Celsius dramatically changes your neurology. The body achieves this through a mechanism called selective brain cooling. Cool blood returning from the expanded vessels in your face and scalp passes through a venous network situated very close to the carotid arteries, supplying the brain. This creates a biological heat exchanger, drawing warmth away from the cerebral cortex. As the brain gently cools, the metabolic demand of your neurons drops significantly, signaling to the entire central nervous system that the time for active processing has concluded. During this deeply cooled, profoundly settled state, the hippocampus engages in an elegant archiving process. Deep within a subregion, known as the CA3, the brain produces rapid, highly synchronized bursts of electricity called sharp wave ripples. Occurring primarily during non-REM rest, these electrical ripples take the massive, overwhelming sensory data of the day, the tactile vibrations, the shifts in light, the complex motor movements, and compress them into tiny high-speed neural packages. These packages are then fired up into the neocortex for permanent storage. It is an extraordinary mechanism of biological tidying. By analyzing the why behind every sensory experience, from the cool touch of fabric to the muted hum of vibration, we uncover a nervous system that is endlessly adaptable. Your sensory networks do not merely observe the environment. They actively mold it, filter it, and shape it to ensure your survival and peace. The quiet you are sinking into right now is a product of millions of microscopic adjustments, all working in perfect harmony to grant you the profound, healing rest you deserve. The time has come to conclude this orbital journey and begin the highly choreographed sequence of returning to the pressurized safety of the spacecraft. Consider the step-by-step physiological process your body undergoes as it transitions from the absolute silence of the vacuum back into the comforting environment of the cabin. First, the astronaut must secure themselves inside the airlock and close the heavy outer hatch. The repressurization process does not happen instantly. It is a gradual, methodical return to normalcy. Over the course of about 30 minutes, valves slowly open to introduce atmospheric pressure, gradually increasing the cabin pressure back to exactly 14.7 pounds per square inch, mirroring the exact weight of the atmosphere at sea level on Earth. As this pressure incrementally returns, in highly sensitive baroreceptors, microscopic sensory neurons embedded in the walls of the carotid arteries and the aortic arch, detect the physical change in the air around the suit. These receptors fire sequential signals up the glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves, gently instructing the autonomic nervous system to stabilize the heart rate, preparing the body for a state of rest. Simultaneously, a specific breathing protocol known as an oxygen washout is initiated. The astronaut breathes 100% pure oxygen to meticulously purge nitrogen gas from their bloodstream, a necessary step to prevent decompression sickness. As this pure oxygen fills the alveoli of the lungs, it binds to the red blood cells, pushing hemoglobin saturation to an optimal 98 to 100%. This highly oxygenated blood travels directly up the internal carotid arteries to bathe the cerebral cortex, providing a profound, refreshing wave of nourishment to the brain cells that have worked so diligently during the spacewalk. Once the inner hatch opens, the process of removing the extravehicular mobility unit begins. Step by step, the heavy, restrictive layers are peeled away. As the suit comes off, the Golgi tendon organs, the tension-sensing receptors located where your muscles meet your bones, completely cease firing their high-alert signals to the motor cortex. Without the resistance of the pressurized suit, the skeletal muscles experience a rapid, cascading wave of relaxation. The vestibular system within the inner ear, no longer subjected to the complex rotational movements of the spacewalk, slowly stops sending conflicting spatial data. The fluid inside the semicircular canals settles. The astronaut floats gently into their designated sleep station, tethering their sleeping bag to the wall, securely anchored for the night. As the astronaut closes their eyes, and as you close yours, a beautiful, systematic neurological descent initiates. Moving into sleep is not a single event. It is a meticulously timed sequence of biological dominoes, falling one after the other. The sequence begins in the visual cortex. Without the high-contrast glaring sunlight of orbit or the artificial lights of your room, the optic nerve stops transmitting photic data. In response, a tiny cluster of thousands of neurons located just above the optic chiasm, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, registers this absence of light. It sends an immediate, cascading message down the spinal cord and back up to the pineal gland, a small pine-cone-shaped structure nestled deep in the center of the brain. The pineal gland then begins a two-step chemical conversion. It takes the neurotransmitter serotonin and enzymatically alters it, first into a compound called normelatonin, and then finally into melatonin. As melatonin floods the cerebrospinal fluid, it actively binds to highly specialized MT1 and MT2 receptors located in the hypothalamus. The activation of these specific receptors triggers the body to initiate peripheral heat loss. Blood vessels near the surface of the skin gradually dilate, radiating heat outward, which physically lowers your core body temperature by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And this precise drop in thermal energy is the absolute biological requirement for the brain to transition from wakefulness to sleep. Notice the way your mind's electrical activity alters as this cooling takes place. Throughout your waking day, your brain produces rapid beta waves, oscillating at 13 to 30 cycles per second. But as you settle into your bed, the electrical frequency smooths out. The brain shifts into producing alpha waves, humming beautifully between 8 and 12 hertz. This is the precise electrical signature of a calm, resting mind, closing the door on the day's external demands. Gradually, you step over the threshold into the very first phase of the sleep cycle, known as stage N1. Here, your neural oscillations slow even further into theta waves, pulsing gently at 4 to 7 hertz. During this transitional phase, The reticular activating system, a network of neurons located in the brainstem, begins to systematically dial down its relay of sensory information. It functions much like a sound engineer slowly fading out the volume on a mixing board. The sounds of your house, the feeling of the blankets, the lingering thoughts of the day, all of it begins to fade into the background. Within minutes, the mind progresses downward into stage N2 sleep. At this point, the brain begins producing specialized electrical patterns to actively protect your rest. One of these patterns is called a K-complex. A K-complex is a massive sudden spike in electrical voltage across the cerebral cortex, and it serves a brilliant purpose. What if a sudden noise occurs in your environment, a floorboard creaking, or the quiet hum of a refrigerator turning on? The auditory cortex registers the sound. But instead of waking you up, the brain immediately fires a K-complex. This electrical spike acts as a neurological shield, actively suppressing the sensory input and commanding the cortex to remain asleep. Accompanying these spikes are sleep spindles, rapid bursts of energy that take the physical memories of the day and begin transferring them from short-term storage into the permanent archives of your temporal lobe. Permit your mind to visualize the next phase of this intricate process, the descent into stage N3, the deepest, most profoundly restorative phase of human rest, known as slow-wave sleep. The brain is now dominated by large, rolling delta waves, oscillating at an incredibly slow rate of 0.5 to 2 Hertz. It is during this delta phase that the architecture of your body undergoes intense physical repair. The pituitary gland, resting at the base of your brain, receives the signal to release rhythmic pulses of human growth hormone into your bloodstream. Step by step, this hormone circulates through your vascular system, repairing micro tears in your muscle tissue, regenerating skin cells, and fortifying your immune system. Simultaneously, a brilliant structural change occurs within the brain tissue itself. Specialized star-shaped glial cells called astrocytes physically shrink in size by up to 60%. This intentional reduction in cellular volume opens up the microscopic spaces between your neurons. Cerebrospinal fluid is then rhythmically pumped through this newly expanded parenchyma, sweeping away the accumulated cellular exhaust, including amyloid beta proteins that built up during your waking hours. It is an elegant, mechanical sweeping of the mind, ensuring that when morning comes, your cognitive pathways are perfectly clear and refreshed. While the brain is sweeping its pathways, the parasympathetic nervous system takes absolute control of your cardiovascular network. Vagal tone, the activity of the vagus nerve, reaches its nightly peak. This powerful nerve instructs the sinoatrial node in your heart to significantly slow its firing rate. Your heart rate drops to its absolute lowest, resting baseline. Your blood pressure normalizes. Your respiratory rate becomes slow, steady, and incredibly shallow. Every biological system within you is sinking to a rhythm of total preservation and deep peace. After roughly an hour in this slow-wave sanctuary, the process shifts gears once more, guiding the mind upward into the phenomenon of REM, or rapid eye movement sleep. As REM initiates, the motor cortex actively fires commands intended to move your physical body in response to your dreams. However, the brainstem executes a flawless protective measure. It floods the spinal cord with the neurotransmitters GABA and glycine. These chemicals effectively block the motor signals from reaching your muscles, inducing a state of temporary, highly protective muscle atonia. You are held perfectly still, perfectly safe, while your mind roams free. During REM, blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic, linear time, and rational decision-making decreases by up to 40%. This intentional deactivation is precisely why our dreams are so beautifully abstract, lacking the strict rules of gravity or logical timelines. The mind is allowed to unbind itself from the rigid constraints of reality, engaging in a fluid, highly creative processing of the day's emotional themes. This exquisite sequence, from the light theta waves of stage 1 to the deep repairing delta waves of stage 3 and up into the vivid landscapes of REM, repeats itself continuously. The brain seamlessly strings together these 90 to 110-minute cycles, building a complete architecture of restoration throughout the night. Your biology is perfectly designed to carry out this sequence. Every cell, every neuron, and every microscopic pathway knows precisely how to navigate this descent. The transition from the active, exploring spacewalker into the quiet, resting observer is an ancient, flawless mechanism built into your very DNA. There is nothing more required of you tonight. No more tasks to complete, no more gravity to fight, no more external noise to process. The airlock is secure, the environment is perfectly controlled, and the quiet of the cosmos surrounds you. Allow the gentle, rolling delta waves to wash over your consciousness. Trust in the exquisite step-by-step processes of your own biology as it heals, organizes, and restores every fiber of your being. Surrender to the beautifully engineered silence of your mind. Good night.